Alright, hello there, and welcome back. Today we're going to be making a custom handle for a wood carving knife. This is going to be a blade from Deep Woods Ventures, but this technique works with most wood carving blades, whether your handle fails, you want to take the handle off, or you purchase it, like this one from Deep Woods Ventures. Okay, and I tend to ramble and have kind of long videos, so I'm just going to show you real quick what exactly it is. You're going to drill a hole in some wood, you're going to shape the wood, you're going to put some glue inside the hole, and you're going to stick the tang in there. So I just want to go over one thing real quick here. Knives will be made out of two different shapes of steel. For the most part, mass-produced knives, just about all knives, are going to be made out of flat stock, which is sometimes called bar stock. And then sometimes guys who make their knives by hand, and they're really forging them into a shape, such as the one we're doing today. They're going to use a round stock, sometimes called rod stock. It's basically just a cylinder. Both of them pretty self-explanatory. Now the end piece, it's not really going to matter what shape it came from, but the tang is going to be different because it's going to be left pretty much how the steel came to them as. So in this situation today, we have a Deep Woods Ventures blade, and again he hand forges his tools out of a rod stock. So the tang is a cylinder. Now this does affect the blade, but we're not going to talk about any of that right now. We're just the way that it's going to be handled is pretty much the same, but it's just going to be a little bit different. And so I'll go over both a little bit, but you're going to be seeing round stock today. One of the great things about the round stock is that it just goes straight into the hole that you drill, and it's clean and it's easy, and it's got a great little fit in there. So that's pretty self-explanatory. With the bar stock, the flat stock, to make a hole the size that you need, there's going to be space on each side once you stick it in there. And so there's a few different ways to get around this. You can leave it, and you can fill it up with epoxy, or you can mix the epoxy with a little bit of sawdust of the same color of wood that you're going to have on the handle. And if you've ever seen a flex cut tool, they do this. Nobody ever even notices unless you point it out to them. It will look clean, it will look totally fine. But if you want to not do that, or you just want to add a little something special to your handle, you can do this as I'm showing here. You can make a rectangular flat shape on a thin piece of wood, and then you glue that piece of wood with wood glue and vice clamp it up to the handle, the larger part of the handle, which has the round hole in it, and then it will appear from the outside that you have a very clean fit with that flat stock. This may come into play if you have gotten a flex cut knife. They do not prepare the tangs of the knives. They leave them completely smooth without... that's not a tang. I'm sorry. Anyway, so a lot of them come out of the handles, the blades from the flex cuts. This happened to me, 2 out of 3 of the knives in the set that somebody got me. And so, I got online, there's a bunch of people who have the same problem. So, you're going to have to rough up that tang so the epoxy has something to hang on to, and then you get a great opportunity to, make your own handle and get into that. If you didn't do that, go grab a blade from Deep Woods Ventures, and go ahead and make it the other style. And it's really, this project is pretty easy, and it's pretty easy to do well and have great results, and it's very satisfying. So the wood you're going to make the handle out of, a really safe dimension, not too funky, is going to be about 5.5 inches long, 3/4 inches tall, 3/4 inches wide. The width is most likely going to be brought in, maybe even down to 1/2 inch, but that's really the biggest measurement that's going to make the knife feel custom, the handle. So I really want you to leave that and give yourself some room, and then keep feeling it as you're shaping it and see what you like on that grip. The wood, I would start with a basic wood. If you sand this thing and take your time with it, it's going to look beautiful, I promise. You don't need to go get into the funky woods yet. The exotic woods and stuff, they have crazy grain, they're hard to work with, and they can be very disheartening if they break or split the wrong way. So try to go get some, just maple or some poplar that you can get from the hardware store. Make sure it's dry. I made my first few handles out of a pine wood. It was, I believe, called Southern Cross. It has some nice colors in it, and it looked really nice. And it's really easy to shape. It's really good to start with. It was a little bit light feeling, but the handles never broke or anything. They totally stood up and did well. So you can make the handle shorter. All you really need to do is get across your palm there, which is about 4 inches usually. But sometimes you'll tilt the knife a little bit, kind of like this, so you can get a little more versatility out of it if it's a little bit longer. But again, if you want, start out at a more length, see how it feels, and then cut it down if you feel like it. I have done a handle that was actually like square. I rounded off the corners, but I really left it as a square thing. But in general, these measurements are kind of going to be at the widest part, so keep that in mind. Like, it's going to narrow out toward the front and back. You guys like that? Okay, so the most important part in your design, speaking of tapering, back to what we were talking about, right at the bottom there, even if you want it to be wide, if it's not tapering all the way down, you need to have it right in the front there. You need to have this little like 45-degree angle. Whatever you're carving, to get access to the base of the knife, the bottom half of it, you have to have that there, because otherwise, nothing's going to be able to get to it, because that corner is going to be in the way, basically. So if you want to be able to use the whole blade, and you do, you need to really taper that part right there. So keep that in mind. On the barrel ones I do in this video, there's going to be, it's just the whole thing's going to taper anyway. But if you're going to have a wider thing than that, make sure to have that little slant right there. But really you want it on all sides and the top. You want it to taper towards the blade and have a continuous kind of curve from the profile of the knife, and the sides a little bit. It's of course flat over there, but you get the idea. First, you're going to get see what size your tang is. That's the little part that goes inside the wood. You can use a hole finder, and you just put it up with a little, what is this called? It's a drill bit. It's a drill bit right there. You can have it a little bit loose, if you don't have the exact same drill bit size, or you just think you want it a little bit loose to make it easier. You can make it a tight fit, and it may look nicer on the top where it connects. But you don't want to. You can be a friction fit, but you don't want to be jamming it in there. You don't want the handle will split, the wood will split. So you can go with try to use a block of wood. It's gonna be easier to measure, make things straight. For the most part, if it's just a block. And so you draw a line like I'm kind of showing you here, kind of find out where it would be, maybe that thick. I end up going with a thicker piece, so I have a little bit of leeway. But these lists, like right here, it's like a pen blank size. I've used those a lot of times, and they'll work for most handle designs. So any kind of thing you're gonna handle, they all work the same. You use a bottle opener, these little kits. You don't have to have a lathe to make a custom handle for these things. You're gonna do exactly what we do in this video here. So I have a squared piece of wood. It's a pretty large piece of wood, so that's gonna make the removing of the wood a little bit more difficult, but it gives me more leeway if I don't quite drill it in the center, or if it's not quite straight, I can actually make the handle go in a different direction, which I actually have to do a little bit. So you just kind of drill in there, and if you take it out every once in a while, so that you remove the wood, it could get very hot to the drill bit, so you want to let it cool off a little bit. And yeah, again, you can see this is easier because it's a square piece, so I can easily clamp it to a table and easily see what's kind of up and down. You want to be real careful when you're doing things like what I'm doing, and you can tape it or tape a piece of leather over it to be more safe. So I'm using an axe to remove a lot of this wood because, again, it's very large, much larger than it needs to be. An axe or a blade are sometimes a bad idea with some of the woods you get, exotic woods, because the grain won't work like a basswood or anything like that. So a rasp, as you see here, would maybe be a good idea. Nice and slow forming, and low stress on the wood grain. There's so many ways. I've used an angle grinder with a sanding disc on it a lot, and that goes pretty quick, but make sure the blade's not on there, and make sure to not hit your hand. It's a pretty small thing. So you see here I'm using a plane. Another option for you. You know, if you have power tools, you can do a bandsaw. So many ways to remove the excess wood and shape this thing. But really, once you get close, you know, start to move over to a rasp or some rough sandpaper, and then go up through the grits if you want to. You can finish with sandpaper and then some sort of actual oil finish or something, or you can just leave it and just make sure there's no splintery places. This is another option right here, and yeah, you can leave it pretty much smooth if it feels okay, and then just let your hand patina it over time. I'm not going to do that in this video because I wanted it to look extra super nice, but you can also use a gouge, and there was a spoke shave before that. Gouge is a good idea to remove some pieces. Anything that uses pressure, like the gouge, you don't want to do that when it gets down to, say, where the hole is. When it gets very thin, you don't want to break that wood. So let's switch over to sandpaper, or put the blade in and do it afterwards. But make sure to protect the blade if you do any work on it after the blade's been installed. So you can do it straight like this with just one piece of wood. And you can see there, I ended up carving a lot of it out just by hand. It's just a lot of wood, unfortunately. So you can use with single piece, just stick the knife in there, or you can use another piece of wood. You can actually use a bunch of pieces of wood. You laminate them together with wood glue. This method is used a lot of the time for, like this one, the hole got ugly because I had to straighten out the blade. You see that? So it made sense to do it on this one. But generally, this type of tang, the round one, it's really not necessary. It's just kind of for kicks. And you want to make sure that it's all very flat. And if it's not, you can have a gap, and it's not going to look very nice on the side there. So it's better to do this earlier in the process, so you have something to clamp onto, and it's easier to make things square when they're square. So again, if you have a flat stock knife, you're gonna have to drill a hole that's as wide diameter of the width of this blade, and that means that there's going to be space on each side. So you'll take a small piece, and you can make on a little piece, you can make a hole that's exactly the same shape, whatever it is, of the blade. And you'll do that by basically, you get a drill bit that's the same width of the knife. You do a little one on one side, and you make a little hole in the other. You maybe do 3 holes, and then you're going to cut out that space, and then kind of basically slowly shape what exactly you need. So I'm going to do it here for this Mora knife that I took out of its ugly handle. And so I drill 2 holes for this one. You can see them there. And this one didn't need more than 2 holes. And so then I take a knife and just cut out the wood in between there. And then you can, you don't have to use a knife. You can use a file, a little jewelry file. You can roll up some sandpaper to shape it out exactly. Or you can use this is a little keyhole saw. It's like an X-Acto saw. So then I try it, keyhole saw some more, and then try it again. And you want it to be a good fit. You don't want to split the wood, but be able to get it right in there so it's nice and snug, a little clean, whatever. And I'm going to saw this off here. And again, before I did all this, I planed it, so it's easier to make it very flat before that. And then so there you go. Then you glue it on like that. Put a little bit of glue. You don't want to fill up the hole because you got to get your tang back in there. And I have the blade in here because I need to make sure that it's on there so that the blade can go back in after it's dry. And so this is the clamping deal. You can see I just barely have enough to clamp onto. Just barely. So unless you know that you can laminate wood without having problems, I would stay away from that. Alright, so here, this is what it looked like after. We're back to the original knife here, the handle. And this is what it looked like after it got shaped. You can see it has that little darkness on the end. That was the other piece of wood after it got shaped up. And then you spend a lot of time sanding if you want to do that. A lot of handles I don't sand. I just leave them, and I don't put any finish on them. It's going to be under your hand, and it's really just, if it feels good, then just leave it. But if you want to make it look nice, especially on the lighter woods that are funky like this one, they'll just get covered by patina. Sometimes patina is nice though, so whatever you want. So I used to put some tape on the back of that sandpaper. It makes it much easier. It doesn't break down, and you can also do, put it in the vise and do, you saw me earlier doing the shoe shine with the sandpaper. And then what I'm also doing here is, after I get it sand with whatever grit I'm using, I might get 1,000 here. And then I go to a 12, and then after the sandpaper fills up and you're done sanding, rub it on there really hard and fast, and it'll get hot under your fingers. And I'll show you here what happens. You can see it's got a little bit of shine from the light. You know, you can see a little bit of like the high mark where the light is. You see I have the filled sandpaper, and I'm just going to rub it. Doesn't take very long. And this is basically, you do like an Indian sunburn. And here you'll see that the shine gets more focused because it's basically we're burnishing the wood. And you do that by rubbing something on there. And this works, so it happens pretty fast. And this is a good way to finish off your handle. So whether or not you put a finish on it is up to you, and it kind of really depends on what the wood looks like. This kind of wood or a burl, they're gonna look funny once they get a patina on them, and you're not gonna be able to see the beauty of the wood. So, I mean, if you use a walnut or dark wood or something, just let the patina develop. Either way, you can always go back. You can always sand off the finish or sand off the patina and go back in there. I'll use half a chopstick to stick in there. You missed the first part where I put on some polyurethane there. On the other handle, I went with an antique finish by Minwax, and I don't see it around that often, but there's a few other finishes. I forget what they're called, like True Oil something, I don't know. But look for ones that are used for like stuff like gun stocks, so they're like not quite as high gloss, and they're harder finish that can deal with more handling. So there we go, it's basically finished there. And yeah, this wood turned out really fabulous. It's got that this is spalted tamarind, by the way. So that spalting is that flame part you see there, and then the purple over there is a tamarind color. I don't know if it's actually tamarind, like the fruit nut thing, if it's that tree or not, whatever. So we're going to use some painter's tape or masking tape to mask this off before we epoxy it. We'll use the other side of the chopstick, as you see there, to mix the epoxy and put it in there. And you don't want to use anything else besides masking tape on your blade at any point. Anything that's sticky that won't come off, it's going to leave crap on there, and it's going to get on your sharpening stuff, and it's hard to get off even with sandpaper without having to refinish your knife and bringing it back to a polish. So don't ever use your knife to open boxes. Try to use a box cutter. They were invented for a reason, and it was not for terrorists. So putting epoxy in is I usually am much more messy with it. This is one of my cleaner knives, and this right here, what I do, I just go over the hole and then I poke it out. That wasn't a real great idea because I had to kind of dig out some of the masking tape, because of course it goes in, and I don't know, but get a good seal on there either way. Usually with a lot of my knives, I'm actually much more sloppy again, and I don't even use masking tape anywhere, and I just like the epoxy will come off blade that is polished. It'll just kind of come right off, but I wouldn't suggest testing it too much. And I just like, a lot of times I'll sand it afterwards, but once you start sanding, you're going to scuff up the blade and all kinds of stuff. So the tang of the knife, you want that to be prepared for putting into the handle. You want it to be roughed up specifically for the epoxy to hold on to it. You can put it on a grinding wheel for a second, or you can just get some really rough sandpaper or a file and just rough it up all over the place. And if it doesn't have this already, you can also just do like some actual indentations on a grinding wheel, or with a file is probably going to be a little hard if it's already heat treated. This tang already comes with both. It's been roughed up and it has a little indentation, so plenty for the epoxy to hold on to. And I'll mix the epoxy here in a Gatorade cap. I save those because they don't absorb the epoxy, and it's very small, so it doesn't spread out while I'm mixing it. And the tip on this one, I think I switched the tips at some point, so turned into epoxy and then sealed it on there. Anyway, so here we go. Wait for that to come out and get an equal portion. I also like the Gatorade top because it stops the I like kind of do two halves basically of the epoxy to make sure that I have an exact measurement. It's not exact, okay, but it's close. So there we go. Then I'll mix it up with this piece of the toothpick, and you want to have a good thin piece. It's not going to have crap coming off of it. and you're going to want to drip the epoxy into the hole. It's very hard to get a lot of epoxy in there. Just take your time, and cause basically what happens if this doesn't go right is it'll clog up the hole and you'll get an air kind of suction thing, and then it won't go anywhere. So then you have to start sticking stuff in there, and then it starts coming out everywhere. It becomes a mess. So try to do what you see me do, where I just kind of drip it in there slowly and let that string, get that string going, that string drip. So I mix this for a little bit here until it gets a little bit bubbly everywhere, a little bit frothy, and then start going after it. Again, it's a little bit frustratingly slow, although with this type of tang there's not going to be a whole lot of epoxy, and you know, it's because the hole's basically the same shape, and you know, it's just not going to be much, and you don't want it to like be a volcano, but at the same time you do want it to be filled up. So if you drill your hole, you know, a little bit too deep, you just might want to keep it in mind. And if it starts to overflow, maybe have a paper towel or something ready. It's really sticky and messy. You can clean this up with some rubbing alcohol. You might want to remember that and keep it handy. If it gets on your hands or anything, which I should probably be wearing gloves, but whatever. Anyway, the alcohol really cleans it up well, but at the same time, you don't want to clean up your work like around the area, because it does make like a chemical reaction with this epoxy, and you don't want it to start breaking down the stuff you want to set up. So there you saw that. I just put a little bit in there, and see how that goes. See, we have a nice snug fit, and there we go. Yeah, make sure you don't cut yourself when you're pushing that in there. I think I get my vice grips with I put some leather over the blade, make sure not to hurt it. Push it in the rest of the way because it is a snug fit, as I said. Gonna twist it in there, and bada bing. Alright, and then the other trick I'll tell you is that you save an old jar, and you have to put this in something for it while it dries, and so it'll stay upright, because you don't want all your epoxy running out, because again it has a bit of time. Even if it doesn't run out of there, it like shifts in its curing time, so try to get it upright. I've had ones where it's like when it's a flat blade, it'll be like literally floating in there, so you really have to set it up with a bunch of tape so that it's upright, and make sure that blade is in there, you know, straight up and down, and exactly how you want it. In this case, again, it's tight, so it's not a big issue. And there's the isopropyl alcohol. Alright, so here we go. This sat overnight. This footage is sped up because I'm having a hard time getting the tape off, apparently. It's a little boring. Although this is the most gratifying part of making a knife, or making a custom handle for your knife. Just kind of unwrapping a present you made for yourself. It's just wonderful. So yeah, you get all that off. Try not to run your hand into the sharp edge. The sharp part of the knife is the pointy part. Yep, and even in fast forward, this is still a little bit excruciating to watch. So let me just make that go even faster. Alright, and I'm off to the races. Okay, so there. It's off now, and I should test it out. Some walnut. Yeah, the handle looks great. Okay, so here we go. Try to get some footage of the three-dimensional footage. Yeah. So really wonderful little handle there. So yeah, it's hard to tell you the dimensions of you know, this kind of shape, but you really just go by feel, you know. And again, the dimensions that I was telling you earlier is kind of what's in the middle. Try to have the curve of the handle go towards the blade. Have it like try to meet it up, so that the top is going, you know, almost seamless, and the bottom almost seamless with the blade there. Right, so that one's the Deep Wood Ventures with the tamarind, balsed tamarind. And then this one is the Mora that you also saw a little bit of. This one is a bird's eye maple. Got some funky figuring in there. And you can see on both of these knives how the kind of end piece makes it a little bit, you know, nice contrast there, nice finishing touch. And of course on this one, because it's flat, makes it a solid connection. And now for something a bit scary. This is but still part of my wood carving knife collection or hoarding pile, if you will. Alright, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions, and carve safe, guys.